Mr. Downey, in the recommendation to the board recently for the construction of this mock-up, this was the language as far as the explanation. Quote, "These mock-ups will permit the evaluation of various construction details and methods, including materials and equipment, to assure the most economical incremental design for the terminal buildings. In addition, the mock-ups will permit the evaluation of various alternative layouts and spatial relationships." Can you take this out of planning ease and tell me what, in layman's terms, this means?
Well, very simply, John, it's a full-scale model that we're building to find out if there are any built-in mistakes in the early plans.
Can you tell me what some of these mistakes might be? What mistakes might you find as a result of this life-size mock-up?
Well, let me take you from the beginning on the rationale for this, how it's developed, and what it really purports to do. The mock-up will be really a piece of the building,
I see.
as you see it here. It will have an enclosed portion of the front of the terminal with literally the window wall in it as it will be constructed in the final building. It'll have one of the entrances of the many that will happen on the circular building. And there will be structural work done on some of the spans and structural requirements for portions of the building that we do not enclose. Now, the building itself, the prototype building, is not a unique idea. This is something that's done every day in manufacturing. Where you're going to repeat something many, many times, as in the great American tradition of the assembly line, you find that there are very large savings in testing each of your connections and each of your details to get the most efficient manner of construction. Get that into your basic plan, and then you save dollars on every repetition.
Can't this be done, though, Jack, in a small scale model, say 100 to 1 size, something that you can put on a table and look at, or does it have to be?
No, it has to be. Now, in small scale models, and these are necessary also, you can test flow and passenger handling and people engineering and relationships of large spaces of building. But what we're trying to get here is the actual construction techniques, the joints of this column and this beam, the relationship of these concrete panels to the two beams that attach to it, the roof relationship to the floor, and the way the glass goes in. Each of these items, developed in detail, may save us hundreds of thousands and perhaps millions of dollars in construction costs in the way it's put together. Now, another factor that's involved, and I think one that's very important, is that contractors in bidding a building of this type, and you understand this is just a very tiny piece of a very large circular building,
I see.
Bid from the basis of plans and specifications. And a typical example of that, here's a set of specifications that for a very simple job. You get an idea of the reading and the work he has to go through, and the plans that can be involved, are like this.
I see.
Now, if I'm a contractor and I go through these plans and specifications, and the thicker they are, the more I realize I may have missed something. So I add a little bit into my bid to assure that it's all there and I'm covered. Now, what we hope to avoid is that very thing. When the contractor can literally go out when he gets ready to bid and see the way the building is put together, see the materials that are going to be involved in it, the way the glass is formed, the fascia, and all of the work that's to be done, he knows what's required of him, and he doesn't have to add that 2 to 10%.
What if he looks at the building, and as you said, the building is built partially for the reason, too, to find errors, to keep from making errors in the actual building. What if he builds it like the mock-up, and the mock-up has got errors in it? Are you defeating your purpose? Or?
Well, the mock-up will not have errors because the mock-up is a research and development function.
If it doesn't have any errors, then why can't you build a building like you build a mock-up?
Good question.
Yeah.
The plans may have some errors in them, and we will build the plans by building the mock-up and find the errors at that point in time.
In other words, you find the errors as you build the building,
right,
not after you build it.
That's right. Then
so what the contractor's looking at is what will actually be built.
That's right. Now, we're also able, when we find the differences, not necessarily errors, but better ways to do it, we go back into the plans and specifications with that information so that when they go out to bid, we have the very best, most efficient building techniques possible.
Well, this is what you might call in a $250,000 dry run. Can you buy that much economy? Will you save $250,000?
I would imagine it'll be saved over and over and over again. I would imagine at least 3 or 4 times that amount. It's almost impossible to tell what delays in time and therefore revenue-producing days are available to us by...
How much would this mock-up cost? I mean, how much would the actual portion of the building that this mock-up represents cost?
Oh, I would think close to $500,000, perhaps 400,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. Don't hold me to that, though.
That's without
pretty
furnishings.
quick.
That's construction cost
That's right.
only.
Keep in mind that what we're doing is building sections of the building in actual material and actually putting together some of it. But other portions of the floor, for instance, in here may be only plywood over wooden floor stringers, so that we can get a feeling of the space relationships.
I see.
The roof will not be a high-quality roof. It'll simply keep out the weather at this time. But the relationships in size, dimension, structural relationships, and the materials inside the building will all be readily available to see.
I see. Then what will be done with the materials that you used to build the mock-up?
Well,
The concrete and glass and lumber and whatever. Is there any
some
salvage
of that can be reused. There's no question about it. Much of it will be provided by people who want to show us their glass samples and their window wall samples, and it will be given back to them.
I see.
The lights, for instance, may very well be delivered by various vendors to get an idea of how well they fit in and whether they can sell their light type, and they, of course, will go back to them.
Well, fine. Thank you very much, Jack.